40G, real, true education, not fake news. It's Sunday, the 30th of May. Great weather, great fresh weather. This is 40G, and I'm making this video because there's an article in today's Sunday Business Post. So I'm just sitting off the field, doing little jobs here and there, and there's a wee bit of spraying to be done around the farm, around grass verges and things like that. So this is the Sunday Business Post, today's post, the 30th of May and 2021. Use different assets and piece of paper. So the article is warning of blackouts as electricity alerts rise. Concerns that national infrastructure is buckling under pressure of growing demand. Well, demand is up a bit. It's up a bit due to data centres mainly. Coal generation is 6 times higher in the first quarter of this year than in the same period in 2020. Now this is from the people, this is the paper, but we were told this would end all coal. We wouldn't be generating anything from coal. And it's up 6 times since last year, as they realise that the wind turbines don't work. The number of system alerts warning of potential electricity shortages on the national grid has risen dramatically in the last 12 months, leading one expert to warn that Ireland is showing the early signs of power systems blackouts risk. Power system at risk of blackouts. Okay, that's there's certain indicators that that's the case. You get that in banana republics and funny places and places where there's war and all that, and we are no better, of course, as you know. In the last year, the single electricity operator SEMO has issued 6 system alerts to warn of capacity shortages on the electricity grid, compared with just 11 alerts over the previous 10 years. Now, my father used to shake hands with himself. Who told you this? Who is he telling you this? Now, SEMO runs the wholesale electricity market in Ireland, where electricity is sold by generators and bought by energy suppliers for consumers. So generators would be the people actually generating it, and then there would be, and they include wind farms, and then the suppliers like Energia, ESB Electric Ireland, Bord Gáis, is it electricity or electricity, and SSE, and I think it's all SSE now. Anyway, you know the ones I'm talking about. Now, so there's the generators and there's the suppliers like Energia. System alerts typically occur during the winter months when electricity demand is highest, but there has been 2 already this spring. So they usually happen when there's terribly cold weather. No, nothing to do with that. Raising concerns that Ireland's electrical infrastructure is straining under the pressure of growing demand. The immediate electricity shortfall is being driven by 2 unscheduled outages of power stations at Huntstown, Dublin and Whitegate. Now I remember Huntstown had two power stations. I don't know what they are in Dublin, but the company that owned it anyway, the genius of an energy regulator, a lady she decided that they could keep one open and they had to shut the other one. You know, this is what goes on. So the Whitegate in Cork, that's only built in 2010, that one should not be given any trouble, but they'll try to maintain. It's old, it's 10-year-old, state of the art. It's breaking down because the pressure on the blades is, with the changing and the revving up and down and the ramping up and down, is so horrific that they're breaking. Nobody knows exactly why it's down, but it's not able to cope with this massive swings. As wind goes up, it cuts down, and wind goes down, it cuts up, right? It has been exacerbated during periods of low wind and by the retirement of peak power stations in the Midlands, as well as a number of generators carrying out scheduled maintenance that was delayed due to COVID-19. Well, of course, they can blame that. In the longer term, and indeed it's possible my video will be banned now because I forgot to stop saying that, but anyway. In the longer term, there are concerns about an emerging mismatch between unprecedented growth in energy demand and variability of renewable power, and the insufficient volume of firm capacity power plants in the pipeline. The commercial case is becoming less attractive for gas plants that will run so much shorter for much shorter periods as backup on the grid, made up mostly of renewables. So what's happening here is, if you're running a gas-fired power plant, you'd normally be allowed to export into the grid maybe 60% of the time. But when you're balancing wind, when the wind goes to blow, you're told you have to make no money, you have to turn off, and yet you have to be there for when the wind catches up again. As a result, you have to be there for when the wind dies down again. Your income is depending on the wind. As a result of the immediate energy shortage, Money Point Power Station has had to switch on 3 of its coal generators, far more in 2021 than in recent years. The whole idea was to get rid of Money Point, and here we have it being wrapped up again and being heated up again, and instead of it switching off, they're going back to it. Coal generation is 6 times higher in the first quarter of this year than in the same period in 2020. 6 times higher. I noticed that myself. While carbon emissions from the power sector are up 15%. So I thought they were supposed to go down, having been falling for years. If the trend continue, as they would appear to set to, the country's electricity sector will experience a growth in CO2 emissions this year, having hit a low last year. As well as firing up dormant coal generators in the bid to manage the mismatch between supply and demand, the Business Post understands that EirGrid, the operator of the national grid, is also approaching businesses with large energy demand or on-site power generation to sign up for demand response. So instead of supplying industry that would always rely on the ESB for generation for power, instead of doing that, and they might have a generator there just in case of a power cut or something, it's what they want them to supply electricity. So if somebody maybe like an engineering company, maybe McHale Engineering or a distillery or a brewery or something that needs a lot of power, that usually used to leave the generation to somebody else, let the grid supply it and pay for it to be done with it. Instead of that, not only are they expected to do without electricity at periods of high demand, there is supposed to be generators as well. Why, if you're good at making something or making timber framed houses or welding, why would you bother getting into the area of supplying electricity? And if you have to supply your own, why not disconnect from the mains power altogether? This requires them to periodically reduce their energy needs from the national grid by firing up their own power sources and reducing their energy use. And as they cut back from the grid, you folks, you know what's going to happen. We're going to hear all this glorious talk on RTE that we've cut down the amount that we're using, when it's actually being generated in the back sheds of businesses and firms and all of these people with quarries and all of that supplying their own. I mean, this is how ridiculous it gets, and this is the depth of the lies that we're told. Data centres are a large user of electricity, making up about 10% of demand currently. I'm being told to get rid of cattle, and they're bringing in data centres. However, that is projected to grow to 27% of all demand in the median scenario by 2029. EirGrid recently told data centres in Dublin area that it could only connect up new facilities to the grid if they had their own on-site generation. Can you believe that? Sorry. They'll only connect them up if they can produce their own. So if you can produce your own, why would you want to bother buying the electricity? This is what they're going to do. They're going to make everyone generate their own and then say that the emissions are down. Power generation. What is there? No. Grid that had their own on-site permanent power generation for when the grid cannot supply them. Speaking to the Business Post, Paul Dean, Researcher Fellow of the MAREI Institute at University College Cork, said that Ireland had displayed several symptoms of electricity symptom heading for catastrophic power failure. Catastrophic power failure.
I am very concerned with the current situation, he said. If you look back at the history of other countries, there are a couple of key things that happen before the catastrophic power failures happen in the system. You see rising electricity demand, right? You see a shortening of firm capacity. That means reducing fossil fuel power generation. And you see a few warnings before the big event, and we have seen them. Ireland has ticked all three of these boxes so far. We have a situation in Ireland where our thermal generation is getting older and failing. Well, that's not true, because Whitegate is a new plant and it's not getting older, but it's failing because of the pressure put on it by wind. It's failing a lot more, he says. There is very little new firm generation being built. Why would it when it makes no money? Which is a real problem. In the long term, more fundamental gap between growing electricity demand and available capacity is becoming evident. With retiring power plants, more variable power from renewables, and exponential growth in data centres all exacerbating the situation. Dean said research carried out by UCC had found that if an increasing volume of renewables is to be accommodated on the electricity grid, then substantially more firm capacity in the form of small gas turbines would have to be built. And I've been saying this all along. Wind needs fossil fuel. He emphasised that although it may seem counterintuitive, more gas turbines would actually mean less carbon. He's talking through his hat. More gas turbines would actually mean less carbon. This is the screwed up thinking, you see, because they would facilitate even more renewables on the grid. But the renewables have to have fossil fuel. What codswallop? Acting purely as a backup. No, not as a backup. Acting as the main power source. Folk, I'm watching me timing here. If there is a failure in the power system, that impacts on people's lives. He's highly intelligent, you know. Lights goes out all over the place. No way of getting home. Traffic lights blocked. You can't use the heating because they rely on electricity to get them going. You can't even charge your electric car. If there is a failure in the power system, that impacts people's lives, Dean continued. But there is also a huge reputational impact from our decarbonisation journey. What do you mean by that? Big fancy words. If something goes wrong in the power system, people will probably blame renewables, even though it mightn't have anything to do with it. Mr. Dean, I challenge you to a debate. If you're ever watching this, I want to debate this with you. No baloney. Come on. You've got long enough. It comes back to the ageing fleet. It's not ageing. The fleet is plenty good. If Moneypoint was ageing, why would we be using it? We were told we didn't need fossil fuel power. Dean emphasised that continuing to use Moneypoint coal system as our backup generation is going to result in much higher carbon emissions. Yes, you can't convert to or transform to a low carbon economy the way they're trying to do it. 2020 was a record low in the power system emissions. But if current trends continue, we expect to see an increase in the emissions. Now the article goes on, and there's a big article on it inside of in page 18, and I highly recommend you buy the Business Post, folks. Not too often it's any good. You might get it tomorrow in the shops. I'll hope to have this up tonight. I hope that my video is not banned because I have said a certain word, but it's not relevant to this, and so it's all coming home to roost. And these people will deny, they'll deny, and they'll deny again. Eddie O'Connor went out a CEO of Mainstream Renewable Power, and he says there's a terrible income problem. You can't do what they're trying to do. You can't double and quadruple your power generation system and expect to run it on intermittent breezes, which rarely occur. That's not possible. Folks, that's all I can say. Give me a thumbs up. Give me a thumbs down. Everything I said has proven to be 100% accurate. Everything, 100% accurate. And when I pressed EirGrid to explain why they're building all this and what they're going to do with the excess energy, they said that they exported to Britain and France. It's all for the French and the British. What a load of nonsense. Thank you. See you.